Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here at the very top of the show, I think we have some music news items. So, Joy, over to you for the music news.
So this is hot off the presses, like modern day times, Tim. I'm gonna hit the nail on it. This is Rick James, Super Freak. Totally came out yesterday, right?
It's a new track. I think is it trending on Spotify or something?
On Hit Clips. Anyway, I literally had another thing in mind that we were going to talk about. I made Tim listen to it, a song that he knows, but he forgot he knew. That was kind of the thing I was going for. But anyway, and then I said, no, we're not doing this. I need to talk about this. So I was listening to music as I do. Wow, shocking, Joy. And the playlist was playing and Super Freak came on it. I love Super Freak. My mom loves Super Freak. I've told you guys I love disco. I'm a disco lover. And Super Freak has that great bass line and like just a no. I can't not hear it and not be happy. So Charlie was looking up and he goes, how much was the budget for this music video? And I was like, it's pretty bad. I mean, it was the 70s. So he said that to him, and it made me pay closer attention to it than I ever have. Mind you, my mom is like known notoriously as loving this song. I've heard it every day of my life since I was a small child. I can quote every part of this song word for word. I mean, at 3 years old, I knew the lyrics Super Freak. Sorry, Mom. That was kind of a win, really. Some parents might see it that way. Some might not. But I never realized him. So you know how like it's him in a white room and he's playing a bass, but he's not really playing it to the actual tune. Like the bass doesn't line up. There's like other instruments. But anyway, he can play. He's notoriously known for being good at that. But anyway, so the girls in the background that they zoom in. Occasionally there's like an Asian, a blonde, I think somebody that was African American, very diverse cast. At first I noticed their faces and I was watching. I was like, yeah, I mean, it looks pretty cheap. I realized they used the same. So to match the chorus and like the bridge and everything, it repeats the same zoom ins on the face. Like it is literally the same clip over and over. To match what's happening in the song. I never realized it. So like, he's like, hey, doom, 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 doom. And then you got that kind of Super Freak verse. When you watch it, they show the three people, and that's why their ethnicity stick out to me. They use the same facial grab over and over and over. They didn't even record the part people multiple times to make the video tip. It's the same recording on repeat after they get out of the limo.
Well, I can tell you, I've actually pulled it up. I muted it, but I pulled it up to see it as you're talking about it. And yes, this video is incredibly cheaply made. And you're right, the zoom ins to the ladies at the back, yeah, it's the same zoom in every time.
And like I specifically remember there was an Asian girl and she kind of smiles and her head's crooked to the side. Tip. Then as soon as they get back out of the limo, it does it again. It's that same screen grab. I saw Tim looking, so I was hoping he was watching it so he knew what I was talking about. Like, I realized it was cheaply made, but I didn't realize it was that cheaply made. And so I just thought it was funny. And then at one point in the limo, the girl like puts her leg straight up. I don't even think it's a real girl, Tim. I think that's like a doll. That's the way he grabs it and sticks it up in the air. I don't know. I had never... It's funny to me that I've seen this video 1,000 times, Tim, and not once until Charlie was like, how cheap was this video? And I went back and watched it. I picked up on all that.
Well, I think the thing to remember is that it was the 80s and cocaine is a hell of a drug.
That's true. So did this song come out in like 80, 81? Because I said 70s, but was it early 80s then?
I think 1981.
There we go. 80, 81. That's kind of the end of the disco era, as we know. So that makes sense. But I mean, yeah, it was Rick James. So I'm probably overthinking this. But my favorite part also, Tim, is there's a part where he's playing, like he picks up the bass and like, the Flow Daddy, da-da-da-da, and then you hear like what sounds like, an actual, like, I don't know, is it saxophone? But he starts playing the bass and I'm like, but why would he pick up his bass and start playing it right with the saxophone? None of it makes any sense. Like, it's like they just stuck screen grabs. And let's be honest, the song is about dancing anyway. So, like, who's really watching it when they're dancing?
Yeah, I think I would recommend that all of our listeners pull up Rick James's Super Freak video. Just if you've never had that experience, just have that experience.
And I want you guys to understand, I love this song. And I love Rick James, even though he's controversial. I love his music. I can separate music to art or music to artists. So with that being said, but yeah, that was just something I wanted to be aware of. And I will let you take it away on whatever your music news and or life events are.
Okay, so one piece of music news I have, which is something I found out this week. So as you probably know, Madonna is currently on her celebration tour, and she was doing a number of dates at the O2 in London, which is an arena that used to be called the Millennium Dome, which is now a concert arena. It's in the sort of Docklands sort of area of London.
Yeah.
It's not near Wembley or any of those other things. It's right on the other side of London. But anyway, I follow somebody on Instagram who went to that concert. And, people have spoken about Madonna and how her face has changed and maybe she doesn't have it anymore and stuff like that. And I was interested to see some of the clips that she posted. So I was looking at it and I thought, well, this is, as per previous Madonna tours, it's quite the production. It's more Cirque du Soleil than rock concert. There's dancers.
She's been like that since the late 2000s, though, I think.
Yeah, there's dancers and there's staging and there's things going on. And, it's a whole visual spectacle. But as I was looking on the stage, I thought, there's no band. And then I looked through a few other clips and I didn't see a live band. And then I started looking it up online. And Madonna is singing to backing tracks. It just seemed...
when she can afford a real band, it's not like she couldn't put that on. Like, what is she doing to benefit herself by not having a band there, Tim? I don't even understand the artistic choice.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the only thing that would bring you to that conclusion, if you wanted to use the stems from your original tracks, and by the stems, I mean the bass line from this track or a drum track from this or a vocal thing from that.
To match identically, I guess.
And it would match, yes, it would match identically. But I don't know. I mean, the standard thing, regardless of the genre, is you have a live band. And Katy Perry, for example, similar female pop artist. I mean, she doesn't have the longevity that Madonna's had, but, some of her later stuff is a lot more electronic-y. But she still has a live band on stage.
Well, I just instantly thought Britney Spears. I mean, Britney's been, known as a lip syncer for years, which which I kind of have a mixed feeling about because I think that she kind of ruined her vocal cords due to what the record company asked her to do. So it makes me feel bad for her. But that could just be the 1990s affinity kid in me. But she's a great example. But I mean, she always had a band playing with her. She literally had a Vegas residency and there was a band in the background. Like, I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah, when you're touring at the level of Madonna, you can have anything you want, and you can have the greatest backing band in the world. You can have a musical director. You can make it sound however you want. It just seems like it's shortchanging the audience. I don't know. If I went to see Madonna, yes, you're going for the spectacle of Madonna, but at the same time, it's a concert experience, and it should have a live band. And I just hope this is not a slippery slope we're going down with some artists of Madonna's ilk who are mostly known just as vocal artists, where they forgo the live band and they have backing tracks. I don't know. I don't know. I feel I haven't paid any money to see this, and it's probably not coming anywhere near here. But I just feel very shortchanged by that.
I would. And the thing about it is like, I just don't understand what the benefit would be besides maybe a cost saving side. But I can't imagine. I mean, I haven't Googled her net worth in a while, but the other thing is like the disservice it's doing out there to artists like that are musicians. I'm saying like guitarists, bass players, drums who want to play on live shows. Like if you go down that, like, you know what I'm saying, Tim? Like you're doing a disservice to these great artists who want to put their work out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you was doing an appearance at a nightclub or something like
that.
Like
the VMAs isn't always a live
thing. That kind of thing. But, a properly staged, massive world tour where you have backing tracks. I don't get that.
Madonna's a weird bird, though, sometimes. She's just kind of I don't know. I can't answer it, Tim.
Yeah, I found out about it and I was very surprised that an artist of that caliber would be using backing tracks and not have a live band.
I agree. All right, Tim, I think you have one more thing, and then I'm going to go next because I want to make it an interlude into the episode. But
Okay.
anyway, go ahead.
Well, the next thing I have is Hannah and I last week went to the cinema, which is very unusual. Hannah loves the cinema. I do not like going to the cinema because mostly it's new films and I have no interest in seeing them. But sometimes something will sort of pique my interest, as it were, and it will make me make that trek out to go to a cinema. So we went to the Grandin Theatre in Roanoke, which is a very small community theatre cinema type affair. And I think a number of years ago that it almost had to close, and I think some sponsors saved it and because of artistic reasons and what have you. But what they had was the Talking Heads film Stop Making Sense. Now, this is a 1984 concert film of Talking Heads, and it has been recently remastered and redone and scanned from the original negatives.
Redubbed. They put it through a Polaroid machine and it washed it.
Exactly. They put it on a photocopier and hit copy and all that kind of good stuff they did to it.
Of course.
And I've seen that concert film before. It was on Amazon Prime for a while. I don't know if it's still there. And it is such a good live concert film. And I thought, well, I'd like to have the experience of seeing it in the theater. So we went to see it. And it was significantly better than I remember it. And like even Hannah said, she's not a big fan of the Talking Heads, though she likes a couple of the hits. Even she said, that was great. It was really good. And it's something you may have seen or seen a clip of, because it's the bit where David Byrne has that suit that's like 5 sizes too big for him.
Before. Yeah. So what rating would you give it out of 10, though, Tim? 10 out of 10?
I would give the whole, not all the tracks were my favorite. But I'd give it a solid 8+ because from a concert experience, it was fantastic. And the interesting thing, this was 1984. You know, a lot of the staples now of live concerts are contained in this, and they were pioneers in this. They had behind the stage, they had back projection with various scenes that would come up, various words that would come up, or slogans that would come up that would come from projectors. Lots of it was done in silhouette. And they had people roving around with like spotlights pointing them at people themselves. All the crew were dressed in black. And if you're a fan of the Blue Man Group, like I am, a lot of the tropes that the Blue Man Group have on stage really appear to come from this. And I'd never really made that connection until I saw the film. And I was like, this, where there's shadows and things and spotlights and stuff. And the other interesting thing about this, as you said, is you've seen it, the way it starts is remarkable. So the curtains open and the stage is completely empty. Like you can see all the stuff at the back of the stage, mops and buckets and whatever. That's all you see. David Byrne comes on and he puts down like a boombox type thing. And he says, I just have something I want to play for you. And he presses play on the boombox and a drum beat starts. And then he plays Psycho Killer on acoustic guitar.
You're right, though. That is almost like the Blue Man Group in the way even the intro.
Yeah. And then as that song almost comes to a close, the Tina Weymouth comes on and they wheel her equipment out. And then they do a song with the two of them together. And then the next song, they wheel the drummer on. So it's the three of them. And then each of the songs, people get wheeled in until the whole stage is complete.
Interesting layering.
It's very interesting. It's such a good concept.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I definitely turned it on Amazon Prime once. Now it makes me want to go back and see that it's there. But that's so cool. It does. I find it interesting that you're talking about this because that's what I like from these. Like the one I always think of is This Is It for Michael Jackson. That's the one that I remember watching in theater when it was like the background of like a tour or whatever they were doing. And for those who don't know, right before Michael passed away, they were kind of doing like a vlog thing of the tour This Is It, which is going to be like his final tour. And I just can't even imagine how much money those people paid that didn't get to see him because sadly he passed away. But like the things Tim's was talking about, like those little iconic little things you don't even know to associate with the artist because they're like, you're like, oh, that's so cool. I always think about that scene, Tim, where they're like doing like Smooth Criminal and like they have like all these little like, I don't want to say ID mechanical things to make it work. Mm-hmm. And you don't even know that they're like you don't even realize all that stuff until you see it and like these things. And like what Tim was saying, like this background kind of stuff they're doing. I find that almost more interesting than the actual music.
Yeah.
Anyway, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna have to go hunt it down.
Yeah, I highly if that. I think by the time this episode posts, it'll probably be out of theaters. But if you're able to watch it on Amazon Prime or something similar to that, again, that's a No Name Music Cast recommendation for you.
And who would have thought it was an actual movie that Tim recommended?
There we are. Well, it was from 1984. I mean,
That is actually on brand. Never mind. Moving along.
exactly. So you had some extra stuff for us, I understand, before we get into the episode.
So, this is a Dolly inspired episode. And before we came in here, I was singing 9 to 5 to Tim, and Tim was, just laughing. And I said, this is about the episode. So, as Dolly makes the world go round, there's one thing about this song that everybody knows, Tim. And what is it? How did Dolly write this song? You've heard it, Tim. The nails.
Yeah, she's clacking her nails on a washboard or something like that.
And then in the background of the song is literally a typewriter, right?
Yeah.
So on top of my revelations about Super Freak, I was originally going to do a one-hit wonders episode, and I was like, that could be fun. But then I was like, I wasn't feeling it, and I was listening to Dolly, and I heard the typewriter. I started thinking about the nails. This episode, Tim, that's kind of modern day because that happened about 3 hours ago, is about songs that have unique or random kind of instruments in them that you didn't know were there.
Ah, there we go.
And I may have asked Tim if he could pronounce this Russian guitar that's going to come in later. Spoiler alert. I was like, Tim, can you say this? And he's like, I got it. Because I tried, and I even listened to the thing, and I was like, if I say that, I'm going to end up on like some list somewhere of people laughing at podcasters.
Well, when you get to that point, I will say that word in question.
Okay, thank you. So I thought it was super interesting. And, we've heard little stories about cars going off and things like that. This is more about unique instruments. The first song I want to talk about, though, and I've heard this, but I don't think I realized it. It is a slide whistle. Are you familiar with where they go, where it slides, Tim?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So it's Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan in 1965. Are you familiar with this song, Tim?
Yes, I am.
All right. So in it takes a plunging slide whistle on the track. Did you know it was a slide whistle? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of didn't.
I think if I'd have, now you mention it, it does sound like a slide whistle, but you hear it in the context of the track and you don't think, oh, that's the slide whistle.
I think you're right. And that's what got me about these songs. And his lyrics are kind of cynical because it's Bob Dylan. Mm-hmm. So you don't think of a slide whistle you hear on when I think of a slide whistle, for those who don't know, it's literally a whistle that goes up and down. I feel like that's the beginning of a cartoon or something.
Yeah, or something at the circus.
And maybe it's because when you're at the circus, yeah, literally a whistle someone's blowing, or when they hit the bell and they hit the thing and it goes ding, it feels almost like that. But I don't know what I thought it was, and I kept thinking of a little bit about Hannah in this because we talked about the Steve Miller Band and we talked about the clapping and the amount of times Tim's told me there's clapping in it. It never registered with me until someone specifically said it. I don't know what it is. I don't pick up on that kind of stuff until someone says it to me.
Yeah, I think it's because the clapping often is part of the percussion of the song, so it doesn't stick out as just, clapping.
Yeah, I think that's true, though. Yeah, I almost hear a hi-hat or something of that nature going off kind of on repeat, and it makes it... Okay, anyway, everybody else is yeah, Joy, they're clapping. But anyway. So the next one is an ocarina, which, are you familiar with the instrument in ocarina, Tim?
No, I know the Macarena.
So an ocarina is this weird, I don't understand. It's a wind instrument, and you blow in it almost like a flute, and it's got little holes. There's 12 of them, I think. And it's I don't know much about an ocarina, but it's a flute. I know that much.
I've actually pulled up a picture of an ocarina, and
yeah.
I'm familiar with it after seeing it, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
So this is an interesting one. This is a song that I know Tim's going to be familiar with, but I don't know that I know that there's any type of wind flute in it. It is Wild Thing by the Trogs.
Oh, yeah. I always thought that was a flute. I didn't think it was an ocarina.
Yeah, so what they said is the original version of Wild Thing had whistling in the instrumental break, but But following the year, the Trogs heard the ocarina, an Eastern instrument dating back 12,000 years, and they used it on a demo of the song, which eventually was put out on the single.
Wow, that's exciting.
Well, it's interesting, I guess. I mean, I see how a flute can easily sound like a whistle, and so you probably could like add that in, but I wouldn't have thought that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to even place the whistle. At what point in the song, wow, thing, you make my heart sing. I don't know where the whistle is, Tim. I wouldn't know.
No, I know where the ocarina break is.
Well, the whistle was the original ocarina. They're saying it was a whistle, and then they replaced it with an ocarina, is what I was saying. But anyway, yes. But where is it at, Tim? I'm trying to like vocalize where a whistle and now ocarina would be.
Isn't it just...
Oh, it's almost like a harmony over top of the whole thing. Like it's layered.
It's towards the end. It's like a solo type bit.
No, I'm not. Hold on. Oh, okay. Okay, I kind of get it now.
It's in there.
Okay, well, it was a whistle, then it became an ocarina. Tim, I don't know where the whistle is. Okay, smart aleck. All right, so this one is Crosstown Traffic by Jimi Hendrix, aka the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and it's a kazoo.
Yes, I did know that was a kazoo. Now, as we know, there are many pioneers in the realm of the kazoo. You have the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and also you have Wispy.
He does him mad. For those who don't know Wispy, first of all, maybe we need to like put a little thing on Facebook about him. But second of all, he does a lot of great parody music. He's a friend of Tim's that I started learning through our friend online group, and he's fantastic. He does a good kazoo.
He is, and assuming that he's available, which he said he would be, on the very next episode, he will be having an update for you about the darkness. And I won't say any more, but he is probably England's finest kazoo player, probably.
So, segue into the song. So he plays the kazoo that Jimi Hendrix plays is made out of his comb and cellophane to simulate car horns on the second single of the Jimi Hendrix Experience's final video, the album Electric Ladyland. So basically, he actually made the kazoo you hear out of a comb and cellophane.
That's a classic sort of a schoolyard way of making a kazoo.
It is, and you can see them doing it where they go up and down, like with the comb in their mouth. I don't know how you realize, though, like, I don't know that I would have naturally been like, this is probably going to sound like a kazoo if I did it. I feel like some kid just did that one day and was like, wow, that sounds like a kazoo.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's exactly how it happened. Now, do you want to know an interesting fact about the Jimi Hendrix Experience Electric Ladyland album?
Yes, go ahead.
So when the album was completed, of course, you have master tapes, and the master tape is the final piece of the puzzle before you send it to a record pressing plant or a mastering engineer or something like that. When the tapes were finished and the tapes left the studio, the recording engineer called it Electric Landlady.
Oh, and that's where the name came from?
No, because it was called Electric Ladyland.
Oh,
but they called it Electric Landlady. I
mean, that would have been something I would have did, Tim, because I didn't even get it, and I just said the name of it 2 minutes ago. So leave that lady alone. Sounds like something I would have done. And then you would have called me on it, and I've been like, what are you even talking about? Would have registered. All right. I mean, whatever. She's still working probably for a record company, making a lot of money. Let her live, everybody. So this is one that I know Tim knows that we may have talked about recently, but I'll find any excuse to talk about this song. This is Bagpipes in Long Way to the Top by AC/DC.
Yes. Yeah, the bagpipes have a big rock and roll heritage. Of course, Mull of Kintyre by Paul McCartney and Wings features the bagpipes. But probably the most famous rock example is this one by AC/DC. And it is, as we've said before, it is played by Bon Scott, because Bon Scott was a bagpiper when he was very much younger, because he was either Scottish or of Scottish heritage when he moved to Australia. And that's how he got his name, because he was a Bonnie Scott. So they called him Bon.
I find this really interesting, Tim, to add on what Tim's saying. So Bon Scott, he says he played the bagpipes a lot when he was young. He played in a pipe band. But he didn't do it regularly. So what's fun though is the producer, George Young, AC/DC's producer, said they gave him a chance to prove that he could do it on this song and did a call and response solo with Angus Young's guitar. And that's how they determined it worked.
Yeah, and it is fantastic. I mean, I'm not a super big fan of the sound of the bagpipes, but it just works in this song and it is so good.
Yeah. And, I hadn't thought about that kind of call and response, but that really is how it goes in the song. So it's smart. And also, it's cool.
Yeah, because it goes, it's great.
We can't go wrong with that. All right. So this is I find this one interesting. Tim may have been talking about this band earlier. It's Uh-Oh, Love Comes to Town by the Talking Heads. And the instrument is steel drums. I don't really find that one unique, but I guess it is unique for a band like this. It seems unique in theory about the Talking Heads until you pointed out to me what you pointed out before the episode that relates them to bands that have steel drums like that. Now that you said that, Tim, the Blue Man Group, it makes sense.
Yeah, because the Blue Man Group doesn't so much have steel drums, but they have
just unique sounds.
Yeah, wacky instruments made out of PVC pipes and very unique ways of making music and making sounds. They have a grand piano chassis on stage, but they don't play it as a piano. They bang the strings of the inner strings of the piano with it's not a club. What's the kind of thing that you hit a timpani with? Those kind of padded.
It's almost yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. But I don't know what it's called. Where's Molly when we need her? She would know all the top of her head. Exactly. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, they hit the strings of the piano chassis to create a sound. So they like using instruments in very different ways. And also, you're saying about the steel drums. There was a time probably in the 80s, I seem to remember on TV when I was a kid growing up, every time you had a musical segment on a kid's TV show, it was people playing steel drums.
I kind of feel like that was a given. There was a show called Gullah Gullah Island when I was little. And I hate to say this because it sounds kind of bad, but they were Jamaican. And of course they had steel drums. And I distinctly remember them playing songs. And it feels like steel drums were a thing for 5 minutes. Maybe kids like steel drums, Tim.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is how steel drums are made because they are oil drums. Yeah. And then what they do is where the lid of the oil drum is, they sort of hammer it and then tune it. And then you have these various pads on the steel drum. When you hit it, it plays various musical notes.
I don't know that I've ever really thought about it, but that's so... it makes sense when you watch them do it. Now that you've said that, Tim, I can see it, but I wouldn't have ever thought about that.
Yeah, it's if I remember correctly, they get the steel drum, they turn it upside down, and then you hammer the lid or the base of it into a concave area. And then once you've got that, they do something with hammering pieces of it flat, and then that tunes it.
Huh. I've seen somebody do that on Facebook. I've seen people who play with a steel drum and get that kind of sound, but I don't know. I don't think I ever realized that's what they were doing. And it's interesting that that's how you tune it. I guess it's only tuned once when you make it. It's not like a stringed instrument where you'd have to tune it every time. Yeah, but to get the sound you want, you'd have to make sure everything's in the right location. Unless somebody hit it with something and it needed to be redented out. But still.
You'd have to take your steel drum to a bodywork repair place.
If Jim hits it with his car or something, gosh, Tim. But then it's still an interesting concept to me that's how you kind of get the tune you want. But it does make sense, though, when you think about it from a drum standpoint, the way they kind of echo, they have create almost an echo or an intense sound by the shape. And then you can manipulate that however you want it by kind of playing around with the shape. It makes sense, but...
That's true. And I can exclusively reveal to you, on my way home tonight, I exclusively listen to the music of David Hasselhoff. Now, stick with this. Stick with this. So I listened to selections from the Night Rocker album. I listened to some of his Europop. I listened to the song True Survivor. But one of the songs I listened to was called Do the Limbo Dance. Now, I highly recommend you check this out on the Spotify or wherever you get your music. Do the Limbo Dance. It is appallingly bad, but you should listen to it. But it does have steel drums on it.
Interesting. Well, after this, I will, in fact, do that because now I'm curious. Tim, you have to remind me.
You'll be incredibly underwhelmed, but I think you should enjoy it.
Just for prosperity purposes. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is a song. I mean, we've talked about this band, I don't know, every day, all the days. It's the Beatles, if you've ever heard of those guys. And it is Norwegian Wood, which I think Tim has heard of. It's the sitar.
Yes. Now, as we may have mentioned before, George Harrison was very influenced and interested in Indian culture. And he learned to play the sitar because he became very friendly with Ravi Shankar. And Ravi Shankar is a virtuoso sitar player. And I think he also went to India and studied under some guru or something like that. You know, he's very much into that kind of lifestyle and culture and the music and everything like that. But he was a very good sitar player. And he plays sitar on a few Beatles songs. This is one, and Within Without You is another song that sitar is played on.
So what's interesting though is I try my hardest to try to understand. Like I mean, Tim, you play the guitar. I don't. I mean, I do play the ukulele, kinda. Debatable. Play it iffy, but I play basic chords on it. But like, I have a hard time, almost like when you see it, it's almost like they're playing it upright like a cello. But it's the way I don't know that I don't understand why there's so many different, what's the things that you use to tune the metal pieces?
Tuning pegs.
Oh, wow. I ever thought that. I just said the things I use to tune. Why are there like 47 on there?
Well, I can explain. So first things first, the sitar, the body of a sitar is made of, it's like a pumpkin or some kind of like fruit like that is dried out and you put resin in it to give it its shape. So that's one thing. The other thing with a sitar is that you have strings like a guitar where they are tuned and you don't so much have frets, they're like bars that go across.
Yeah.
And you play it. But all the strings that you're talking about are drone strings. So when you play the tune, all of those drone strings sympathetically resonate, and those are tuned to a certain key. And then as you play, that's how you get that kind of drone sound that's going on in the background. The other thing that's interesting with a sitar is that the way that the frets or the bars on the neck are done, they don't respect the Western scale being 12 notes. They are what we would call microtonal. So a lot of those notes are in between half steps. So which is why a lot of Indian music sounds incredibly unique because they're using those quarter and eighth step
That's
notes.
why I don't want to call it choppy, but I wouldn't have ever thought of that until you said it, Tim. That's super interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting with the sitar, as I said, the neck on it doesn't really doesn't have a fingerboard like you would recognize on a guitar or a bass. It's completely open with, as I said, with bars going across. So when you play it, it's very possible that instead of bending the strings, you kind of press the string down and it gives the same kind of effect. So even though you're microtonal, you can bend into notes and out of notes and stuff like that.
Wow, that's so cool. So, Tim, you brought this up, so I'm just going to go into it. The Beatles, With and Without You, was on my list because it has the sitar, but it also has a tempura, a dilruba. There's like 5 instruments, but guys, it's a dilruba and a tabla. So basically, what they're saying at the time, George Harrison was deeply fascinated with the Hindu scripture and philosophy. This is the second track he wrote for the Beatles using traditional Indian instruments that I just named, and the first being "Love You Too." From Revolver, which was also written by Harrison and recorded without any of the other Beatles. This track, it's very global, spiritual. I feel like it plays so much into what he was at that moment. But yeah, Tim brought that up, so it's not the only one.
There we go. As part of the 1001 albums challenge that I'm doing with our listener Megan, one of the albums is actually Ravi Shankar, and what's cool about it is that he actually talks about how the ragas, as they call them, are sort of set up on this album. He'll say, "Oh, this next song is this, and this song is that," and then they play it. And it seems to be that they're very improvisational, and they're led by the tabla player. The tabla player leads the whole thing, much like a drummer would in a rock band. They set the tempo, sets the beginning, ends. The dynamics is all. Everyone follows the tabla player. And much like rock guitar, it's interesting that in that raga, you can play certain notes and then you improvise around those notes, which is really what you do with rock guitar, because for the most part, you're playing around a pentatonic minor scale, depending on what key it's in. And then depending on the keys, what notes you play. And it's more or less the same thing. It's really weird how sort of Western music and Indian music all sort of came up with the same idea, though it's different.
Yeah, but I think it comes to, I think that it does make sense though, because music's one of those things I kind of put like with math, where like the basics of it can be universal. Like for some reason, our brains tend to like that kind of rhythm, that sound that we all gravitate to, good or bad. Maybe some people might not like it because, maybe they like, I don't know, 16/8 instead of 4x4s, but whatever. And I'm not talking about boards, everybody. I'm talking about music. But with that being said, it does, but it doesn't make sense. Because like when we talk about like cavemen, Tim, like I imagine, somebody out there's going to laugh at this. This is the stupidest thing I've ever said, but I kind of think this way. Like if you tap two rocks together on the same 4x4 beat, like I bet you that's even back when you look back in cavemen, that's what they were doing. So we kind of find a way to get to that, whatever it is we enjoy.
There we are. They were bashing out the drum beat to "We Will Rock You" long before Brian May had ever been thought of.
Stupidest thing I've ever said, but it got to what I was trying. It's not the stupidest thing I've ever said. Let's be honest, everybody. But I got to where I was going. In a very roundabout way. All right. So this is where I'm going to use Tim's ability to say this Russian triangular folk guitar that I can't. So this is a song that I'm convinced, Tim. So everybody always talks about, like, I've had this, I'm going to start from, wow, that's a lot of words. But I've had this theory about this song for a very long time. And if I ever, for some reason, was in an electric chair or being executed in some way, and they televised my execution, and they asked me, well, what song should we play in the background? I'm convinced this would be the song. Mostly because it's an amazing song, but I feel like it's also incredibly confusing in that moment. And it's really how I'd want to go, Tim. And this is Boney M's Rasputin. And there is a triangular Russian guitar in this that Tim is going to say the name of in.
It is a balalaika.
Do you know anything about this guitar, Tim?
Yeah, it's a triangular Russian guitar. It seems to come from the same family of instruments as the lute. I'd assume it's tuned in fourths or something like that. I don't know. I
mean, does it seem to be pretty similar to just a regular guitar, though? Like as far as playing, or is it completely different?
I'm gonna bring up. I'm not super familiar with it. Let's have a look.
I mean, you're gonna know more than I will when it tells you what it is.
I seem to have lost the ability of how to type.
I mean,
balalaika. So let's have a look. It has 3 strings, I think.
I wonder what 3 strings it has. Like, what the heck are the strings? It says in the lute family. It's made in 6 sizes.
It's very similar to a lute, which is like a medieval instrument.
I mean, it definitely looks very like almost like a mandolin and kind of the way it.
And it says what's interesting about it. Of the 3 strings, the bottom strings are tuned the same in unison.
So then you only have 2 sounds, really.
Yeah, and they said sometimes the balalaika is tuned guitar style, so G, B, and D.
So I'm trying to think now in Boney M, where, I mean...
Bum, 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 bum. It follows the tune all the way through, and it's played on balalaika.
That makes sense. Okay, so it's the whole song. There's no one specific place. But I mean, honestly, there's so much going on in that song, and people are yelling, hey at me. I can't tell.
Yeah, and as we've said before, Rasputin by Boney M is completely factually historically accurate.
So that song, though, Tim, first of all, I feel like it's gotten a resurgence, and I know why. There was when I was younger, there was a Just Dance game, and it was on there. There was a like, hey, hey, doom, doom, I have. So what's funny about this? It was Just Dance. I don't know, one of the early Just Dances, and you were literally wearing like a Russian Tsar outfit because the last Russian Tsar type thing, and so. I still though, and I did it the other day, and I will literally have Charlie like come on the podcast if I have to prove it. I played this version of Just Dance so many times that if you put Boney M's Rasputin on Tim, I can do the dance perfectly to that freaking Just Dance from when I was a kid. Brandy would tell you the same. I know she would. For some reason, I was obsessed with it, and I wasn't the only one. And there's like all these memes now on the internet. It was like mom and dad getting divorced, and I'm just in the bedroom. Doom, doom, they're doing the dance to it. Like I can close my eyes and remember it so well. And I had heard it a little bit before that. It's weird though because it was underground for a long time, and it became popular again. I think it was because of that video game. But I actually knew River of Babylon, that version from Boney M long before I knew Rasputin. And I think that's not something most people would have said.
Yeah, and all of the Boney M is such good music. And as we said, the producer who put Boney M together was the same guy who put together Milli Vanilli.
I mean, he knew what he liked, Tim. He liked people who looked good.
He did. And he also wrote lyrics like this. Now, I love this. The first part of Rasputin. There lived a certain man in Russia long ago. He was big and strong, with his eyes a flaming glow. Most people look at him with terror and with fear, but to Moscow chicks, he was such a lovely dear. I mean, that's musical poetry.
It's amazing. And like I can't hear you even say with my brain instantly going into it. But then there's that song, Ma Baker. I did not realize Ma Baker is sampled in Poker Face. So I found that out on one of the episodes. The Lady Gaga song Poker Face. Mm-hmm. I'd heard Ma Baker and I had heard Poker Face, but I don't think I'd ever really put it together until I was doing the episode. Then I was like, and then I went back and looked, and like Lady Gaga, like she gave him credit, but like how many people have heard Poker Face? I would never even realize that it was the same song.
No, you wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. I think it's only a very small element of it that was sampled in that.
It is, but it's the chorus, so like it feels like it should be obvious. But anyway, everybody, there's my thing for those who don't know. All right, so moving along in the weird thing of me, this is a music video I've talked about many times. Stays in my head. I can't not see it. It's because VH1. It's Paul Simon's "You Can Call Me Al." Mm-hmm. It's a penny whistle. Apparently, they use a penny whistle in this song, which a penny whistle is kind of like a little woodwind, almost like a small flute. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim? Mm-hmm. I've never played one, but it's almost like a recorder, I would think.
Yeah, and it's like a break. It's like a penny whistle break.
Yeah.
And there's like a slap bass thing going on underneath it.
Now that you okay, so I guess because I'm so stuck on that, like almost like the horns and the funky ding, 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 like that's all I hear when I think of this song that it didn't even register with me. But what's interesting is he basically said he picked the penny whistle up because, Paul Simon's known for like his work in Africa and apartheid and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he said he literally heard local musicians in Southern Africa use the penny whistle and like we're doing music with it. And that's what he chose to put in the song. Yeah,
because the whole of Graceland, it was very much his step into world music and embracing a lot of African music, and he worked with a lot of African musicians, and there's a lot of that kind of sound is all over Graceland.
African thing.
And it's a great album. So it doesn't surprise me that, as he's embracing that style of music, that he would want to use something that he heard, that a local musician would have been using.
The more we talk about this, the more concerned I get for myself, because
there's a statement.
Because how have I heard so I find it very interesting. Charlie falls in the Tim camp, and I do not. I associate it with the idea that I am a singer before I am a instrumentalist, right? That's where my vocal paralysis is my thing. Tim is much more of an instrumentalist, good or bad. That's just who we are as people, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I focus on a song, I focus on the lyrics and the actual words that are being said. I hear what the singer is doing before I hear the actual music. But unbeknownst to me, that's not the way most people hear music. Like Tim and Charlie talk about music, and they almost always focus in on the actual instrumental part.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm looking and I'm thinking about how many times I've heard, "You could be my bodyguard." I've heard that so many times. Never once do I remember there being a whistle.
Yeah, it's a whistle. It's a whistle solo.
Like, what is wrong with me? I just don't ever hear, like, I know it's there and I know about like the wall of sound and layering and I understand these things, but like, it's until someone brings it up to me, I do not notice, Tim. I just don't.
Well, I think music is something that is to be unwrapped. There's so many layers. There's so much going on, especially with lyrics. I mean, some people really connect with the lyrics. Some people really connect with the musicianship. Some people connect with both. And even if you just connect with the musicianship, you could hear it 1,000 times and you hear it in headphones and you're like, oh, where did that acoustic guitar part come from? That's so cool.
Now, you do make a good point on that because when you listen to something with headphones nowadays, especially modern day, really good headphones, I hear stuff. And what's crazy is the concept of surround sound, even though it's been around forever. I know you even talked about kind of like the beginning of it with your dad's store he owned.
Mm-hmm.
Like you hear it, but you don't hear it until you have like a really good pair of headphones on. And then you start hearing things from the right and the left. And you never realize like that they're literally like to give you that or surround sound feeling till you've truly felt that with headphones. Like it doesn't even seem real when you just hear our music coming out of the radio. But then you put headphones on and it's such a weird world.
And I'm not talking about AirPods or $2 earbuds or anything. I'm talking like I have 2 pairs of Audio Technica. I think they're M50X headphones. They're a few $100s each. So that's one thing. Always buy headphones that have a cable. Don't get involved with this Bluetooth nonsense because it's going to compress it through the connection. And plus, why do you need to bring a cable into it when the thing is right beside you? But that is a story for another time. But if you have a decent pair of over the ear big headphones that are good quality, listen to music through those, and it is a completely different experience, even for songs you've heard 1,000 times.
It really is. And then it'll be like, I almost feel like, especially when they remaster them, and I don't know exactly what they do, but I will hear things in that song that I swore was never there to begin with, Tim. Like you could have replayed it sound by sound, and I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't know. All right, Tim. So before I go into my last few songs, do you have a song that you know of that has a weird instrument in it that you'd like to tell the people and put them on? It's okay if you don't. I was just curious.
There is a electric light orchestra song, and I forget which one it is. It has a fire extinguisher in it. It is
fire extinguisher.
Let me find it.
Yeah.
I forget which track it is, but it certainly is credited as having. I think
fire extinguisher.
I think it's Mr. Blue Sky. I believe it is to be Mr. Blue Sky, and it has has a fire extinguisher in there.
I'm trying to feel like, do you know where the fire extinguisher is? Because I don't.
No, it's just one of those things that's in. People know, and men
it's just
tell you.
Stuck in your brain.
Yeah, men tell you in pubs.
What is the one that like famously has like a car going off? What is it? There's there's a Billy Joel song where they're like, and I can't think of the name of the song. I would know it off the top of my head, but it's like they're in like an apartment complex or something of that nature in New York City, and there's a bunch of people out front looking, and then the car goes off, and in the song they credited whoever's car went off because it wasn't part of the original, but it made it into it when they were recording or something of that nature.
Yeah, would you actually, now thinking about it, one that does come to mind is the Van Halen track "Running with the Devil." When "Running with the Devil" opens, it goes, yeah, it goes boom, boom. That horn is the horn from David Lee Roth's Opel Kadett station wagon, which was the vehicle they used when they used to go around and play all their early gigs. And it's the horn on that, and then it's slowed down. The tape is slowed down to make that pitch drop.
Oh, okay, that makes sense though, because now that you hear it, see, I assumed it was something along those lines, but I would have never thought that it was like his own car.
Of course, yeah.
Anyway.
And David Lee Roth talks about his Opel Kadett station wagon very fondly. And in his house, he has the hood of the Opel
Mhm.
Kadett station wagon and the front windscreen mounted to the wall. And then he has a taxidermied deer, but just the backside of the deer poking out of the window as like an art piece in his house. I've seen a picture of it. It's remarkable.
I mean, that's amazing, honestly. That's truly amazing. I don't
Yeah.
know what I thought, but that's not what I thought, Tim. Like if I pictured what his house would be like, that's not what I would think. All right, so this one, it's pretty cool. So, by the way, I for those who this is probably going to happen in the future and you already know the answer to this and you're probably going to laugh at me, but the next band is Pink Floyd, so that's why I'm thinking about this. And
Okay.
then I was, you know, how I thought the Tiki Plant on The Masked Singer was Robert Plant. Do you remember that,
Yes.
Tim? So now I'm convinced it is. I am convinced it is. And if this comes out, and for some reason Pink Floyd made me think of this, it's the whole thing, guys. Promise, stick with me here. If this comes out, Tim, that it is not Robert Plant, whoever this person is needs to go into a Robert Plant. Because tonight I was watching The Masked Singer right before we got here. And I mean, I realized that you guys are probably all screaming at me right now because you know who the answer is. And you're also probably going, Joy, how does this relate to anything you're talking about? But I promise you guys, it does. I know he's not from Pink Floyd. I know he's from Led Zeppelin, but for some reason, I originally thought it was somebody from Pink Floyd. Then I thought it was Robert Plant. And I am now convinced that the Tiki from The Masked Singer is Robert Plant. So I was like, how did she get there? But it all connected in my brain. Tim, if the Tiki on The Masked Singer is not Robert Plant, I owe you $5.
Okay, there we are.
Last week I was convinced it was a member of Pink Floyd, which is why seeing Pink Floyd made me think of this. Now I just watched the Tiki right before I got to the desk, and I am convinced it's Robert Plant. Somebody out there's going, does Joy think Robert Plant is in Pink Floyd? No, I don't, everyone. God. I just took a long time to get to that. And back to where we were going with this. The song is Shine On You Crazy Diamond by Pink Floyd. And in it, and even if you're not familiar with this song, because I'm not super familiar with it, apparently they use wine glasses and a glass harp. So what they said, there is some solos of, Richard Wright on keyboard and David Gilmour on the guitar, but apparently there's an eerie trickling glass harp that kind of sets some existential kind of, think extraterrestrial type thing because it's Pink Floyd mood. And then they like, I guess they like push together wine glasses to make like a sound.
Mhm.
And he has a thing online where he goes through, I don't know who's he, I guess Richard Wright, whoever it is, or maybe Gilmore, that they teach you how to do it. Like you can watch a video of them and they'll tell you how to play the wine glass part of Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And you can find it online.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'd never really heard the wine glass harp before, but it's one of those things I now need to go and listen to it to hear that.
I don't know that I would have ever thought about it. I probably would have just thought like wine glasses, glass sound, clinking. You know what I mean? I don't know what I associated it that way, but I thought it was cool that you can literally see him teach other musicians how to do it.
I like that.
I'd be worried I'd break the wine glasses. Like I go just like glass goes flying everywhere. So this is not a specific song, but it is an ode to something we talked about. And I want to say it before I go to a specific song. This is Steve Miller Band. It is clapping noises in like 5 songs. Tim, what would you say is the biggest clapping notorious Steve Miller Band song?
It would be Take the Money and Run.
Money and Run.
Yeah, that without a shadow of a doubt. That's the one that quite literally takes the money and runs.
I had to throw that in there for Hannah. Now, the next one is, it is Jethro Tull, and it's the flute. When I think of Jethro Tull, though, I don't think of them playing the flute. Do you, Tim?
I would probably say yes, because Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull famously played the flute in a rock and roll band or a progressive rock band, which was unusual at the time.
that's what they're saying. Is they said he did it in most songs. That's why there's no specific song. But for some reason, it's basically like he literally has been pictured with like the mouthpiece in his mouth. I guess it's like a famous picture of him.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking of like Jethro Tull songs, I just don't know that I ever realized it was a flute.
Yeah. And in fact, when I saw Martin Barr, who was the original guitarist from Jethro Tull, and he goes out like as Martin Barr's Tull, or Martin Barr plays the music of Aqualung and all this stuff. He has a singer who doesn't so much play the flute. He plays like the like tin whistle or something like that to get that exact sound. And he plays it on a number of songs because you have to have that in the band to make it sound authentic.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. I just don't know that I would have ever. To be fair, though, I'm not sure I realized that Jethro Tull, Ian Anderson, was British either till recently. And then someone was like, he literally has like one of those MBE or things or whatever they are.
MBE, OBE, he's a sir or something.
Something along those lines. Okay, so I know what the OBE is and I know what the sir is. What's MBE?
Member of the British Empire, or rather than, I think it's Order of the British Empire.
Do you know what the difference is, Tim?
I think one's better than it. There's also a CBE, which is something of the British Empire. Commander of the British Empire, that's it. And okay. I think CBE is the top one before you become a sir. And once you're a sir, that's like the top of the tree.
So what exactly is the British Empire? Is it just the British Empire like I think of it? Or is that what they're calling the army? Like, what is like just the British Empire? Like, how do you become a member?
So years and years and years and years ago, England ruled most of the world.
Yes, and there's a lot of colonialism that happened.
Yeah, especially like in India and other places like that.
India, Africa.
Yeah, that was the British Empire. And then, of course, a lot of these places quite rightly found their independence, and they were no longer governed by England. And even like the United States, I mean, that was originally governed by England, by King George. And then, of course, there's a whole thing with throwing the tea and taxation without representation and all that kind of stuff.
That's an American. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's just a holdover from that. So I think the British Empire these days is not quite the empire that it once was, but it's using that terminology because I'm sure those awards were probably created back in those days.
Interesting. I mean, I understand what I feel like the British Empire is, but like just telling me I'm a member of it in modern day society in my brain doesn't make any sense because like I don't feel that it still has its what it used to be.
No, and we're 5 minutes away from there being another Scottish referendum and Scotland leaving the United Kingdom or something like that. So I mean, the whole days of those empires are done.
I mean, it's just a weird concept. And as an American, what was it? So my mom's going to be mad at me one time. So I have expressed my views on like the royal family and stuff like that. But I kind of feel like as an American, none of it really matters to me. So I probably shouldn't just say anything, right, Tim? But my mom was talking something and with the royal family, and I didn't agree with it. And it surprised me that my mom cared so deeply about this random thing. And I looked at her and went, Mom, I'm American. Aren't we supposed to be the opposite of the royal family? Remember when we threw all that tea in the harbor? Like, I don't know. She started laughing. Like it took it down. But
it took it down a peg.
I mean, really, at the end of the day, I really don't care either way. But it was just funny because it's like, remember those guys who threw all that tea in the harbor? What was Paul Revere trying to save us from? Anyway, moving along. I'll stop with the American jokes. So, with that being said, this is an instrument I had never heard of, Tim. I'm hoping maybe you have. I did a little bit of research and it's similar to like a guitar meets a violin and it's played with a bow. It's called a hurdy-gurdy.
Yes, I am familiar with it. And there's a famous song by Donovan called The Hurdy-Gurdy Man.
Well, that's not where I was going, but I was going to go with Metallica because apparently they used it in a few songs, but there's a few different versions of Low Man. There's like even like a lyric video where they talk about they play the hurdy-gurdy, and I don't know that I understand what a hurdy-gurdy is, but from what it says, it's a string instrument that produces sound, and you use like a bow like a violin.
Yeah, and it sometimes has a handle on the side that does the bowing action.
I just don't. I can't visually that seems like a very complicated art instrument to play, Tim.
Yeah, but you think when people were developing these instruments in ancient times now, they were using the technology that they had of the day. So they were trying to innovate with the tools and the sort of reasoning that they had.
I mean, that's true. And that kind of leads me into what I'm going to next. So those who don't realize this, I kind of grew up in the South, and you think of there's all those little things where they're playing the spoons and they're playing the wash tub and things like that, but that's just them picking up, like I was saying with the cavemen earlier, right? They click the rocks together to a 4x4 sound. It's the same thing. So the next song is Soundgarden, the band, and it's a song called Spoon Man. I guess what they're playing, Tim, the spoons.
They're playing the spoons. Would you look at that?
But I thought it was interesting. They did get a Grammy for the track. Have you ever heard the song, Tim?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Soundgarden is one of those bands, not on a completely random note, not related to the Spoons, that is so distinct to me that kind of defined a whole generation of sound.
Yeah, because they fall into the bracket of grunge, but I wouldn't put them into that at all. They're almost post grunge. They're taking some of that sensibility, but they're taking it somewhere different. They were down tuning their instruments, and then you had Chris Cornell's incredibly unique voice. And I like a lot of their songs. I mean, probably the one that everyone is familiar with is Black Hole Sun.
Yeah. And I don't know anyone who doesn't hear Black Hole Sun. It is very grungy in the sense that it's almost, though, to me, the beginning of when grunge ended and that kind of alternative rock sound came.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They kind of set right at the beginning of that to me.
It kind of straddles those two eras, most definitely.
And I think they played the best of both worlds really well. But what I thought was interesting, and I guess I forget this. Now everybody in the UK is going to come for me because I just was talking about the royal family, and now I'm going to say something else. I associated the spoons with Southern culture in America, but when I was reading up on it, really it's British and European tradition to play the spoons.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I've seen a lot of spoon playing whilst I lived in England.
On the streets of London, Tim, nobody's out there playing the spoons.
No, but I tell you one thing. I was once playing the Pulaski Moose Lodge with a band I used to be in. And we was on stage playing Van Halen's Jump. And there was a guy that always used to come to see us who played the spoons. And he was an older gentleman, and he used to go behind the bar and get them to provide a few spoons. And then sometimes he would do a bit of spooning, and then they weren't good enough quality for him. So he'd go through the cutlery drawer until he found the ones he wanted. Anyway, we was playing at the Pulaski Moose Lodge, and he was at the front playing some spoons because he used to sit in the audience just playing his spoons. Yeah. And Jump was coming up. And I made the request. I said, whatever the dude's name was, I can't remember. I asked him whether he would join us on stage for Jump. And I actually have a video of this guy playing Jump with the band, playing the spoons. It is maybe the highlight of my musical career.
So I knew, you guys don't understand. I was cackling, laughing because I just had this image of someone, and they got two really good sides. So if you guys don't know what we mean by play the spoons, typically people do it on their knees. Some people do it on the back of their hand, but you usually have two spoons. And weirdly enough, Tim, this is something I'm actually quite good at. Usually, have two spoons, one balances on the top, one balances on the bottom, and then you do it in rhythm to whatever the song is. But I just can't hear. Go ahead and jump. To the tune of someone playing the spoons. I don't know why, but audio, that's the weirdest concept to me, and it made me laugh to think about.
I will find the video for you, Joy. And in fact, I will post the video up on our page just so everyone can see it, because it's just amazing. It's
amazing. It's bizarre. Is he good at it though? Does he do a good job?
I mean,
can he keep rhythm pretty well?
In the realm of playing the spoons, I suppose.
I mean, it's not exactly you're playing chords or anything, but does he keep time?
Yeah, it's fine.
So random. All right. Well, I have two more things, and then I have my own little personal thing I'm going to talk about, not related to any of this, that Tim is aware of and goes with the weird instrument thing.
Yes.
If you're not keeping up here. So with that being said, the next one is an audio harp, which I'm kind of familiar with. The concept of a harp is very interesting to me because I haven't like looked into it too much. I mean, I imagine it's pretty similar to other string instruments. You can click. Yes, Tim, you can click. You could strum, you could pick out, you can mute, you could open, you know what I mean? You could bar it, things like that. I imagine a harp is very similar to that. But the band is The Loving Spoonful, and apparently they use the audio harp a lot. And in their hit song, Do You Believe in Magic? That's what he's playing. He's playing an audio harp.
Oh,
I don't think I would have realized that.
No, I mean, I've heard the song many times before, but I would have never made that connection.
Yeah, and it's John Sebastian, who's the lead singer, and it says he was known for being an old time folk blues kind of play, like that's what his thing, and that's before he went into The Loving Spoonful. That's what he was into. Now, from what I get is, for those who don't know, is a Sitar, whatever the heck the series of family is, string instrument, and it does have about 4 octaves on it. Mm-hmm. It has a lot of strings, though, so I'm not exactly sure I understand. So there's a bass, a tenor, an alto, and a soprano octave built in. Looks like they run from like F to E, so that seems pretty good for tuning. But there's a lot of strings, Tim, a lot.
It sounds like a nightmare to tune, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, so it's like F sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, D, C sharp, D sharp, E. Yeah, that literally sounds terrible. It starts as like the A below middle C, for those who know what middle C is. Mm-hmm. And I now have come to the conclusion that I never want to. 47 strings, Tim. Jesus. Okay, 36. Some have 47, some have 48. So 36 is the magic. Well, could you imagine having to tune 36 strings, Tim?
I don't know. I've tuned a 12-string guitar before now, and that was as much of a nightmare as you would imagine.
Because, and you know, like certain ones, like there's like, so like for those who don't know about tuning on the ukulele, it's Grace eats every apple. So Grace eats every apple. And for some reason, Grace chews every apple. For some reason, my A wants to always be flat, Tim. And no matter what I do, Grace can chew every apple she wants, but for some reason my A always is flat. Could you imagine that? You have at least 7 strings on there at all times that you know before you even get to them, they're going to suck.
Yeah, as like I said, tuning a 12-string guitar is hard enough, and those are in pairs. Some of them are in pairs and some of them are in octaves, but even just tuning that is a nightmare. But with that amount of strings, 6 strings is enough to deal with when you're playing a gig, let me tell you.
I can't even, I mean, is there like a tuner out there you can download on your phone for the audio bar? Like, it's just such a random, I wouldn't even know where to get, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But yes, that sounds absolutely terrible. I feel like you'd spend all of your time before the episode comes, Tim, the show starts, just tuning in 3 minutes before. They're like, are you ready? And you're like, sure, let's go with it. I don't know. And I've heard a lot of people say and what's funny though is I also learned this lesson. If you're not paying attention when you're tuning, Tim, what you think should be the outside string is usually the inside. And what you think is the inside should be the outside. So when you're doing that, just on the ukulele, I can't even imagine on 47 different strings. You think you've been tuning this string for 20 minutes and you looked at it and realized you've been tuning the opposite one. And then you just start crying, tears. Tears just start welling up.
Just sounds like a nightmare to me.
Grace chews all apples. Or every apple, depending on how you look at it. I still, Tim, think about it all the time, though. It's always because it's GCAE, and so after I learned that, it was this Grace Vanderwall who has a YouTube channel. I think she's a singer at a TV, she's an actress, and she said when she learned to play the ukulele, she learned it as her name, the GCAE or GCA, and so now I still hear Grace chews all apple. Anyway, every apple.
There we go.
Everybody out there's wow, that was a long time to say that. But she taught me that. I don't know if other people know that, but GACE.
There we are.
So with that being said, I don't think that I would be able to come up with an acronym for 47 strings.
No, it sounds like a task almost itself.
It does, because like think about that, Tim. You'd have to like pull up a chart every time you went to tune your instrument. All right. So the next one is, this is the last one I'm gonna say, and it's one that's been played in multiple bands, but I wonder if Tim's very familiar with the glockenspiel.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that.
So I'm not, in the sense that like I don't know how it works, but it's kind of like it's a bells percussion. I know, like xylophone type thing. The glockenspiel is now. I think it's German. It sounds glockenspiel sounds German. Don't come for me, German people. With that being said, my friend Molly, who was on here, plays like all of these instruments, and she probably could tell you. But the glockenspiel has been used with the Ramones and Bruce Springsteen and the E String Band. So whenever that famous line of the guitar line on Born to Run, he's playing the glockenspiel in time, like doubled up with the guitar riff.
Yeah, so just to give you a rundown on a glockenspiel, the difference between a glockenspiel and a xylophone.
Yeah.
A glockenspiel, the little bars are made of metal typically, and a xylophone, they are made of wood. Now, the xylophones are what we had in music class at school, and I'm assuming that you would probably have had the same in your music class at school.
Yeah, that's the one I know. Like I played around with, and they had the little kid versions where you hit them and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then, and like a full-size glockenspiel is laid out like a piano keyboard, where you have your half, your full tone notes at the bottom, and then you have your sharps and your flats on the top. So, if you're playing a piano, it's a similar thing, but you play them with beaters.
Yeah, and I'm sure Molly, because Molly played bells, which glockenspiel are a form of bells. She played xylophone. I'm sure if I put Molly in front of a glockenspiel, she could show us what we're doing. I hope that they are German, because that was just an assumption for the name.
Yes.
I don't actually know that for sure. But yeah, apparently it's, I guess that the guitar riff, though, it does kind of have like almost sounds like a falsetto piece over top of it in a way. That's not what it is. But now I realize it's a glockenspiel when he's doing the guitar riff.
There we are.
I would never have thought the Ramones of all people. The ballad, I Want to Be Your Boyfriend, he uses a glockenspiel. Well, they use.
And I think it's one of those instruments that, by the time it gets buried in the mix a bit, you don't know that's what it is. But when you hear it in the context of the whole song, if it was missing, it just wouldn't sound the same.
Yeah, because it has a very kind of a ring to it. I would imagine. I don't know that I could, like, I don't know if I could understand, like, audio-wise, the difference between a glockenspiel and a xylophone or something. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if I would know that, like, just because I don't know these instruments that well. But from what I can think of when I visualize either of those things, it's a very distinct kind of, like, intense sound because it's a percussion instrument. So, like, I feel like it, like, layers so perfectly on top of it. It's just, like, a little... But if you didn't have it, it would sound... like hollow, I guess. I don't know the best way to say it. It sounded like it was missing something.
Yeah, it wouldn't sound right.
There we go. Wow, Tim said that way easier than I. It's fine. So I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to talk about my own personal news, and we will be done. And the only reason I want to do this is because it plays into what we were saying. The Violent Femmes are a band that I always think of very distinctly because there's the Sabrina the Teenage Witch episode where they go to a Violent Femmes concert and they wait in like line forever, and then they put a spell on the members of the band and go back to their hotel with them. Nothing bad happens, but it's like a whole episode. And I mean, for me, I think of them as one-hit wonders, Tim. I really do. Mm-hmm. It's Blister in the Sun and it's nothing else. I can't tell you one other real Violent Femmes song, but apparently they notoriously used a xylophone, apparently in multiple tracks as one of their main percussion instruments.
Well, there we are. Yeah. And again, it's one of those sort of classroom instruments, but, it buried into the mix, it makes it sound exactly how you want it to sound.
It's kind of cool, though, because I always find it very interesting, especially on the podcast. Tim does this a lot to me. He'll point out like sounds and stuff that, like I was saying, I just don't hear or get for whatever reason. It doesn't register with me. And then I go back and listen. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is a glockenspiel or whatever. All right. So another reason this came up in the grand scheme of things is, one, it was kind of fun to just talk about all these different instruments. But two, because I now own a kid's version of an accordion.
Yay. And I spent much of yesterday evening talking to Joy about this, she sent me a couple of videos where she demonstrated the child's accordion. And then we had a 25-minute video chat as I was talking her through what the buttons did. It was a discovery evening for everyone.
So from what I got was it was supposed to run C to C. Mine wasn't even big enough for that, but it mostly ran the scale. Tim heard a very bad version of me singing a scale at one point to try to reference it. But the thing that was so interesting is there's 3 buttons opposite of like what you would like the keys, like the piano keys that you associate with an accordion. And the part that I was struggling with, and Tim kind of explained this to me and now I get it, was the fact that you have 2 different sounds going at the same time. So like I get the keyboard side of it. Like I know if I play this notes, I'm going to make like what sounds like a C chord or a D chord or an E chord, just kind of based off of what you play on a piano. Given there are no black keys on mine because it's the kid version, but on a bigger accordion, there would be that version of that. But when you actually open the accordion and close it, a sound comes out. So there's 3 buttons on this little kid accordion on the other side, opposite of your right hand. And one was what they had it labeled when I looked at it online, and Tim did a much better job of explaining it. It said bass, I think chord, and then it said air valve. The air valve really doesn't mean much, but what Tim explained to me was the chord and the bass is basically just a C or a D playing over top of whatever you're playing. Mm-hmm. And that's to add that extra sound, which basically would be a treble, like you would think of like your treble or your bass on like a grandstand. But I did not get it at all until you explained it to me.
Yeah, you got 3 buttons. One turns the drone off. One gives you a C or a D note drone at middle C. And then the other button gives you a C or a D note drone, depending on whether you pull it or push it. And then it's like an octave lower than that.
Exactly. So you could play C or D in a treble sound, or you could play C or D in a bass sound, or you could do the thing with the I don't know why you would use it, but it basically shuts off the sound. I'm sure there's a reason for it that I don't understand, but it's the first instrument I really like. I mean, obviously playing the ukulele or the piano or drums or any other instrument, you have to use 2 hands. Like that's normal. But it was the first instrument I had messed around with, Tim, that had like 2 separate sounds that you had to account for. Mm-hmm. And so that concept was like mind-blowing to me last night. So, there's many videos of me messing around with it. And it was funny because even today, Tim, I picked it up and I've just been like trying to do any basic song I know, like on the piano, like a good, like last night I was playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which is also Mary Had a Little Lamb, everybody. But like Happy Birthday was another one. I was messing around with any of the basic piano music that I've ever heard. I've been trying to learn it on the accordion now.
Well, I'm hoping in a future episode you will debut your accordion. I mean, Joy and I, we're coming up to the holidays here in our neck of the woods. You've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas.
I'm sure I can pull for Jingle Bells.
Yeah, so, we often double up on some of our episode recording weeks just so we can sort of take some time off over those holiday periods. So, Joy, I think, we've got a lot of records coming up. I think the accordion needs to come on the air.
Okay. I mean, I will try my best to come up with a good Jingle Bells before the holiday season.
Well, I like the sound of that.
What else do you have for the people, Tim?
I would say find David Hasselhoff's Do the Limbo Dance on YouTube because it is terrible and brilliant at the same time, and be kind to everyone that you meet.
I agree. Bye.
Bye. See you later. Bye-bye.